What? They don't even believe in democracy anymore.
Another one bites the dust. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today, it's not only Bill Blair that has resigned, but Nate Erskine Smith is also stepping down. Stephen Harper had his portrait unveiled in Parliament, and we've got another floor crosser, but it's not what you think. It's not bad. Just a political play. Let's jump into this. Starting this one off, Kirk posting this. Another day, another company suspends investment in Canada because of red tape. Glencore was planning to invest $1 billion, which includes $300 million on emissions reductions, but still can't get regulatory assurance that they could operate. It can't operate after March 2027 with the new provincial regulations. This is ridiculous. We're going to lose a company investing $1 billion because of these stupid regulations. And we've got this one here from the Globe and Mail. In the Trump era, the F-35 is no longer the right plane for Canada. What a ridiculous article to put out. We're going to buy Gripens, these old jets that'll get completely dominated by the F-35s. This is so stupid. And some of these liberals are just getting brainwashed. We should scrap F-35 program and buy Gripen. Like the F-35s just went in and knocked out all the missile defense and radars in Venezuela. And they easily went in there and captured Maduro because of these planes. And we're going to get old technology like the Gripens. That's a great idea. What a waste of money. Liberal media trying to use propaganda again. The F-35 has always been the best plane. Yep. With that fear mongering, we've got this. There's a lot of this talk now. Should Canada have nuclear weapons? Obviously, this is all centered around Donald Trump. The fear of America rushing in and stealing our country. We need to have the nukes. Now, they don't outright say that, but I mean, this is basically what they're doing here.
Why do we not need nuclear weapons in your view? Why do we have no intention to get it?
Because Canada is a signatory to international treaties which preclude us, number one, and Canada has been a non-nuclear proliferation state for a long time.
So he says we don't need nukes. Obviously, media pushing this out scares Canadians. There's no doubt it scares Canadians. Like, start talking about us having to need nuclear weapons. This is just more fear-mongering propaganda. Moving ahead, we've got Carney giving a speech during Stephen Harper's painting unveiling ceremony. And just so you know what we're talking about, this is the portrait here. Listen to Carney's words here. He talks about a balanced conservative government, and it kind of backfires on him.
Stephen Harper was and is a conviction politician. But he was also, when circumstances warranted, a pragmatist. Came to Ottawa as a balanced budget conservative, believing rightly I got to a comma, not a period. Believing rightly that government should live within their means. Be like that as well.
You should take his own advice then. He's going to spend another $12 billion on grocery handouts and increase inflation even more. Maybe start cutting some stuff.
But when the financial crisis struck, he did not let ideology prevent him from doing what was necessary, running deficits for 5 years to support the Canadian economy through the worst global downturn in generations.
This is very weird because obviously he worked for Stephen Harper. So did Poilievre. Stephen Harper endorsed Pierre Poilievre. I don't know if this is going to affect anything in the polls with all this talk about Stephen Harper and how those were the best times. The richest middle class, I think in Canadian history, was under Stephen Harper, at least in recent times. The nice thing about Carney is he seems like an actual human. Pierre just seems like CPC robot. Oh boy, we got a lot of work. There's a lot of brainwashed people here. Moving ahead, talking about the resignations. Nate Erskine Smith, Bill Blair.
Yesterday, longtime MP and former cabinet minister Bill Blair resigned from his Scarborough Southwest seat to have become the High Commissioner to the United Kingdom. And today, the Liberals announced that the Ontario NDP deputy leader will run in Blair's former seat. Ali Begum was, until today, the Ontario NDP MPP for Scarborough Southwest. And the dominoes keep falling. Just hours after that announcement, Liberal MP Nathaniel Erskine Smith said he will seek the Ontario Liberal Party's nomination to run in Begum's former riding. And while he says he plans to support the Prime Minister in the meantime, this could mean another by-election on the 2026 calendar.
So this is all very coordinated here. And this is a complete cluster. So Nate Erskine Smith is going to run in her riding. She crossed the floor to the Liberals. As you heard him say there, she's an NDP MPP, Ontario NDP party, the deputy leader, the second in command, crossing the floor to the Liberals. That's a big middle finger to the NDP. But I'm not surprised. You know, people will do anything for money and power. That's what you're seeing here. You get an opportunity like that, just throw your people under the bus. That's what she's doing. She's first elected NDP MPP in 2018. posting, handed in a resignation on Tuesday. Nate Erskine-Smith coming out with this. When it comes to Ontario, I'm all in. Goal is to make the biggest difference, yada, yada, yada. He'll actually push back against Doug Ford here because the lefties like this guy. He'll probably pull in some of that NDP support because he's a very far left liberal like Trudeau. We got Mario calling him out here. Don't be shy, resign, go all in if that's what your focus is. I mean, so basically he's still going to collect his cushy paycheck until it's time for him to actually run, and then he wants to win and then just switch over versus quitting and going all in. I mean, these guys are all cowards, as Mario's pointing it out here. So quit. Seriously, you should quit. The duality of collecting a paycheck as an MP at the federal level, but campaigning for the provincial leadership should be grounds for dismissal. It should be. It's ridiculous. Yeah, as M. Brand's posting, yeah, keeping your federal seat. Yeah, just dipping one toe in the water there. And while we've got CBC and Cochrane here, this is from this clip the other day of the media saying that they got Carney's back. Well, Cochrane unblocked his account to fling some more mud before he locked it again. This group represents people who make scripted TV shows and movies, not news. So that's his big clap back. And he says, all you internet detectives should try to use this little known tool called Google. It's amazing what you might find. He's so arrogant. And then he comments here, it's almost like this clip is being presented and portrayed in a deliberately misleading fashion to leave a bad and inaccurate impression. But I can't imagine anyone in a position of real authority or responsibility deliberately doing something like that. That's hilarious coming from David Cochrane, who does this on a daily basis. Bureau of Propaganda. He's a bureaucrat. Yeah, the bureaucrat here. These are the head guys. You'd think he'd be obsessed with maintaining a professional image, but he really thinks being snotty, catty, and condescending on social media shows that he's real. That sums up Cochrane, snotty. Now, going back up to the top here, David Cochrane's argument that this group here only represents people with scripted TV shows. Then using his advice to use Google, I found an example of a TV show. We've got Anne with an E, as we can see. This is network CBC television, Netflix. This is represented by the CMPA. With tax dollars, what they do is inject stuff into these shows, which slowly changes public perception. And as we see here, the series tackles a range of issues like helping orphans, child abandonment, psychological trauma, social issues such as conformity, gender equality, racism, religion, homosexuality, bullying, freedom of speech. They inject a whole bunch of woke nonsense in these kind of shows. Netflix woke Anne with an E wants it both ways. That's its biggest problem. They inject all this woke ideology nonsense into this, slowly changing the public's perception. David Cochrane thinks we're stupid. We know exactly what they're doing. They're doing it in media that people watch and enjoy, TV shows. They're also doing it in the news media. David Cochrane does it every night. Jumping over to CTV, we've got a wild take here from Robert Fife. Believe it or not, I agree with the guy completely here. Talking about that NDP, what's her name? Dolly Begum. Listen to this take.
But I cannot resist commenting on what I've heard here before with these other people. This is liberal cynicism at its worst. Look, this Miss Begum has no principles whatsoever. She was a New Democrat, a deputy leader. She sold her soul to the liberals. And the liberals, they don't even believe in democracy anymore. What about grassroots democracy? What about nomination meetings where you go and you fight for a nomination? No, these two, the one in Krista Freeland's and in this one, have been picked by the party to run as nomination. So there's no grassroots. There's no feeling within the party that you can go and vote for somebody because you know what? Liberals may not vote for Miss Begum because they see her as what she is. She was a former New Democratic NDP leader, deputy leader. So
does it matter? Like, political parties will push back and say, like, obviously we're trying to win.
Well, of course they want to win.
All sorts of parties appoint.
But I'm not. I don't. At the same time, you have to call it for what it is.
Of course. That's why we have Bob Fife in the world. Yeah.
He's right here. I mean, they're just appointing people. There's no democracy. There's no grassroots, selling their soul. As for the other lady here that's taking over Chrystia Freeland's riding, Melissa's already dug this up here. Holy crap. Carney Liberals have selected Danielle Martin, who wrote a book, and one of her big ideas is basic income guarantee. You can't make this up. So it's right here. Implement a basic income guarantee to alleviate poverty, which is a major threat to health, yada, yada, yada. Who's paying for that?
And, I get the sense here, the way things are being played out in this landscape, that we may be going into an election campaign.
Yeah, it doesn't feel impossible at this moment. Yeah. George, you want to jump in, then I'll get Shakir.
So as for election, we've got 3 by-elections here. Nate Erskine-Smith, Bill Blair, Chrystia Freeland. So either Mark Carney is going to put a by-election or 2 or 3 in here and test him out, maybe just one, and see where he's at, or he might just jump the gun based on the polling numbers right now. But if he does that once again without an NDP leader, which they'll get at the end of March, then he looks like a complete jerk. This is once again a toss-up. He might not give a crap because, well, he doesn't seem to care about anyone but himself. So,
well, yeah, just
really quickly to say, that's the other part of this, right? I mean, I would be shocked if we don't see Ms. Begum in some kind of senior role if she does get elected. So I think there's more dealings going on here than just, hey, do you want to be an MP? I think there's more being offered to her, which again adds to that cynicism that Bob's talking about. And I think on top of that, having on the same day, Nate Erskine-Smith announced that he's going to run in that seat. Like, this was a heavily coordinated,
organized, yeah.
It was a heavily coordinated plan to kind of try to get around any kind of, as Bob says, grassroots elections.
Seat.
Well, and he's going to sit as an MP during the election.
I want to give the floor to Shakir. Shakir.
I mean, think about this. They're losing NDP support, and so maybe they're trying to do this to pull some back. You got a real NDP-looking character like her, that Dolly character. Not to mention, she was a Ontario deputy leader. This might be their Hail Mary to try to keep the NDP supporters.
Your thoughts on that? And then maybe also because you worked in the Harper government, your reflections on what's occurring here.
I think just for Harper, I mean, to Bob's point, right? When you're in government, you know, folks don't really like you. When you're out of government, you know, people kind of praise you. So good for Harper. Obviously, you know, a guy who's had conviction, was principled, really focused on detail, and you know.
Yeah, he's 100% right here. I mean, they're all praising. I see leftists praising Harper now, but back then they wouldn't have been praising him. It's always like that.
Well, you know, maybe I'll pick up on something that Bob laid out there at the end, which was whether or not we're about to have an election. I am skeptical that the Prime Minister is likely to call an election anytime soon. I think he would much rather govern. But I'll say, perhaps as a cynical liberal, as Bob puts it, I think the Prime Minister should call an election. I think if you look at the polling, it's very clear that he would secure a majority mandate and he should go to the polls and seek a mandate to deal with our trading relationship as we head into the Cushman renegotiation.
This liberal guy, Dan Moulton, is absolutely clueless. But I'm not surprised. He thinks Carney would rather govern. He's not doing anything. Let's get real.
Revolving door seemingly going on with all of these changes. Yeah. What do you make of this move? And it signals this will be, with Nate Erskine-Smith, the third pretty high-profile departure in a short period of time from the federal Liberals.
Did he say when he's going to be
going? It's when the nomination happens, when the by-election gets called. He's going to stay on until, like, it's up to Doug Ford, I guess, when that by-election would be. So I don't know if
he's going to hang around and collect his paycheck and campaign. It's just ridiculous. He should have to quit.
He wants to go without a paycheck for a while, but, you know, he's got to figure that out.
It's really interesting. I think just something that Supriya just said made me think about this, that any person who is seeking the Liberal leadership in Ontario can announce that they plan on seeking a seat in that area. And it kind of takes out of the play anybody who's not within the caucus right now who is trying to become the leader of the Liberal Party, because there's going to be an open seat. Obviously, they're going to have the ability to run. So I think, Nate, it's interesting that he came out and announced it, but that probably is going to be the place where any new leader of the Liberal Party in Ontario is probably going to run. It's their first opportunity to do so.
Right. And so, Emily, how do you see this, right? It's a New Democrat at one level, moving as a Liberal to another level, and then, you know, Liberal sliding down. It's like a game of snakes and ladders. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I think to understand those kind of moves, you always need to take it side by side. There was a lot of floor crossing last fall when it came to the Conservative to the Liberal, and I think in the current context, it made more sense in the sense that you do have a Liberal government that has shifted to the right of what the Trudeau era represented. And so it makes sense that if there are people within the Conservative Party that are a little bit more progressive conservative who want to be in power, that they would move over. For somebody who comes from the NDP to go to Mark Carney right now is more counterintuitive. And when you read the statement that she put forward in terms of explaining her decision, it reads more like a line than an actual explanation. So I'm just curious. I do want to understand what
She's not buying it here, but I mean, we know what's going on here. They're trying to keep that NDP support by bringing in one of the biggest lefties in Ontario who has lots of exposure to a lot of voters there. As a leftist herself, she's not buying it. So I don't know if NDP voters will buy it either. I don't know if they feel like it's a you traitor, you left our party, or are they fine with it because it's still on the left? I don't know. I would assume they wouldn't like it just the same as a conservative voter would go over to the PPC. Conservatives wouldn't like that either, but I mean, who knows?
The line of reasoning is because it's not a first historically. I think Bob Rae is perhaps the most famous Ontario NDPer to have switched to the federal Liberal. You've had the reverse in the past. I'm thinking of Tom Mulcair, who was a Quebec Liberal before becoming an NDP leader, although a lot of NDP.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of floor crossers here, but it burns bridges. People feel snake bitten every single time. So, I mean, these are all just political plays. People moving around. It's all opportunity and money and power.
It comes down to, I don't think it's right or left.
No, but the big national dynamic, right? Like he's had some conservative floor crossers. There's a New Democrat willing to join, and you just see they're above where they were in an election, that they almost won a majority. Just what does that mean for where the country is and what it means for Mr. Poilievre, for example.
Snapshot in time, obviously.
Yeah, sure.
He had a good week in Davos. Everything seems to be going their way right now. But I still think that the way it breaks down underneath those polls is demographics. And I still see that Mr. Poilievre has a real great hold on people 35 and under. And Mr. Carney has a real hold on people 50 and over. And whether or not that's right or left or center or middle, I don't know. But it really is dividing out that way in terms of when you break down the polls underneath. But we're going to see what ends up happening. I'm just grateful that when I heard the word floor crosser, it wasn't one of mine. Because what a day for that to happen with Harper in town, it would have been awful.
Yeah, well,
yeah, that's well said. If it was another floor crosser and it was from the Conservatives, that would be miserable. In fact, it's NDP provincial going to Liberal, and it's not federal NDP going to Liberal. That would have been awful too. Clearly, the Liberals are trying to work their angle provincially, federally. That's all they're doing. They're spending their time there versus fixing our country. And really, all this stuff comes down to, well, getting a deal with Trump. I thought this article here is just well put. It says, what if Trump is painfully right? Trump's methods offends, but his diagnosis of freeloading allies and failing international order may be uncomfortably closer to reality. That's what we're looking at with this whole situation. People don't like Trump, so they just want to punish Trump no matter what, even if it means destroying our own country. That's where we are with the liberal voters. They don't care to look at anything else, whether we're getting in bed with communist China. They don't care as long as it's punish Trump. They're making this whole thing of Canada versus Trump, but really it's Canadian families and American families that buy and sell products and goods. Trump is in control of America, but I mean, our relationship is deeper than Donald Trump. He's only been there for 4 years. He'll be there for a total of 8. Unfortunately, the left cannot put this aside, focus on the fact we have to get a deal here. As CBC Watcher is quoting here, nobody wants Trump to be right. The possibility offends, but wanting is not analysis. The offense is not refutable. The painful possibility that Canadian policymakers must sit with is that Trump's crude assessment of allies and adversaries and the failing international order may be closer to truth than the elegant alternative Carney presented to standing ovations in Switzerland. Sometimes the rude guest sees what polite ones have agreed not to mention. This comment here, the fact that we're allying with China, shows that Trump was right all along. Any point in time before Justin Trudeau, there would be politicians in jail. And so speculating that Donald Trump might be working with Carney or not, one thing's for certain, he's not working with Carney with China. It would just be working with Carney to make America stronger, bring more of our companies down there. But it's clear Trump doesn't want to have anything to do with China and has been warning all of us about China. And the way he does business with them is he keeps leverage over top of them so they don't have power over America. Carney, on the other hand, has given China the leverage over us. And so regarding our trade deal with America, we've got Chrystia Freeland here talking about our CUSMA negotiations and how important they are.
You mentioned that U.S. Mexico-Canada trade agreement you helped to negotiate. That is set to be reviewed by this summer. What happens if the U.S. pulls out of that?
I think that would be devastating for the U.S. economy.
Devastating for the U.S. economy.
That's right, for the U.S. economy. It would hurt them, it would devastate us. Like, we need to be real. Bilateral trade equals goods and services purchased plus goods and services sold. For the United States, Canadian bilateral represents 2.8% of U.S. GDP. For Canada, U.S. bilateral trade represents 38% of Canada's GDP. Now, one thing we do have here, and I mentioned this in a previous video, Pierre Poilievre and Steve Outhouse have to come up with a new strategy to address Trump. They can't just ignore the situation and just focus on the cost of living because they won't win that way. They have to address Trump somehow. And we have this now. So Jamil Javani has agreed to go down to Washington to DC using his relationship with his good buddy J.D. Vance, the vice president, and try to work out a deal with Donald Trump.
I'm on my way to Washington, D.C., and I want to explain to you, the Canadian people, exactly why. Because you're probably going to hear about it. I'm going to Washington because I want to help Prime Minister Mark Carney be successful in negotiating a trade deal with the United States. Now, that might sound counterintuitive because I am a principled conservative. He is our liberal prime minister. But the reality is that this is not a partisan issue. CUSMA and trade with the United States is so important to the Canadian economy and to our future as an independent, self-reliant nation that conservatives and liberals don't need to fight over this at all. In fact, we need to work together. The leader of the Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre, has said as much. He has offered help from conservatives to the Liberal government on this issue, and I'm acting on that. In my opinion, this is not about posturing or politics. This is about business and workers.
I'm not exactly sure what's going on here. If Carney agreed to this, he must have, because you know what's going to happen here. If Jamil goes down there and talks with JD Vance or Trump and says, we need to work this out, let's do this, let's do that, and comes back with like a framework of a deal, he's going to look like the hero as well as the conservatives. And then with cost of living being so bad and Trump not being the issue, the conservatives will then likely surge in the polls. Did Carney approve this? I don't know.
This is about unions and entrepreneurs. This is about whether we have a growing economy with stability for investment and opportunity for our young people, or whether our economy is perpetually in a state of uncertainty.
This is going to take away Mark Carney's boogeyman if he's able to get a deal. And it wouldn't be Carney getting the deal. Sure, Carney would try to claim credit, but I don't think he would get that credit if JD Vance is the one who sets this up. This is a smart move. This is the right move. I'm all for this. That all rings authentic. I mean, the fact that he's saying we're going to work with the government, like they're changing the tone here where they're not going to block stuff. They'll work with the government, because really, if we can get rid of this problem and it's all affordability and Carney's not going to solve it because it works against his net zero agenda, then there's nothing else to place the blame on, aside from Carney yesterday blaming Pierre Poilievre for all of his failures of rising cost of food. But I mean, all that stuff can be backed up with actual sources and math. Carney can only lie so many times before people realize that he's a chronic liar.